Greetings, traveler. I am the reviewer from the north. Welcome to my critique of the last Wolverine film to feature Hugh Jackman in his iconic role, Logan. Allow me to begin this critical analysis by loosely quoting myself from another review that I did almost 2 years ago. To say that a work of art is overrated is to say that everyone who likes it more than you do is wrong by default. And a critic using that word in a review makes the review uninteresting for me. This is a statement that I still believe in 100% and always will, and for this reason I will not say that Logan is overrated or even say that it is overhyped. This film was a miserable, predictable, cliché-ridden snorefest, but that doesn't mean that anyone who liked it or even loved it is automatically wrong or has poor taste. I sincerely believe that when it comes to something as subjective as a work of art, two or more people can come to wildly different conclusions with regard to its quality, and each opinion formed will be as valid and should be considered as valid as the others, especially when those opinions are backed up by solid arguments. Now that I've got that out of the way, let me just say one more thing, which is that I am not making this review to be a shallow contrarian. I simply feel very strongly about this film and wish to articulate why I disliked it. To all those who loved Logan, I am sincerely glad for you, and I'm not looking to upset anyone. Difference of opinion is pretty much always a good thing when it comes to art. So if you'd like to know why I think Logan was terrible, stick around for this review and see for yourself if my reasons hold up or not. Thank you in advance for watching and listening, and let us get to it. Part 1. The tone and the premise. Woody Allen once said, "Life is divided into the horrible and the miserable." And I think he must have confused life with this film. This is probably the most subjective of the reasons why I didn't like Logan, and also the smallest problem I have with the film. But the tone of the thing was just depressing all the way through. Logan is one of the most joyless films I have ever seen. Here's the premise. There are no more new mutants. Perhaps there are almost no mutants left at all. Wolverine is an alcoholic chauffeur, and Xavier is old as dirt, drugged up and stuck in a bed with another mutant occasionally looking after him. When I saw this purposefully dark and miserable start to the film, I was hoping and expecting for the rest of the movie to provide some contrast and some lighter moments. There's nothing inherently wrong with a depressing premise or a dark tone, but when the entire film is just so unbelievably gloomy and sad that it makes me call up my psychiatrist for extra antidepressants, then it is hard to enjoy the experience of watching it. Even when Logan, Laura and Xavier are having dinner with a family that's about to get killed, the tone stays miserable, because the film is so predictable from beginning to end that we already know the family will get killed because Wolverine and friends stayed at their house overnight. This criticism is more of a personal dislike than an objective flaw, I admit that, but I felt like addressing just how miserable the film felt before getting to the really big problems. So, let us now get to the really big problems. Part 2. Everything is predictable. Woody Allen once said, "If you ever wish to feel clairvoyant, simply watch Logan, the 2017 movie starring Hugh Jackman, because there is nothing in that film that you won't see coming from several miles away." And oh my Devin Townsend, was he right when he said so. I would almost bet money on the screenwriters deciding in the first meeting that the best way to write Logan was to shove every existing movie cliché into the story. Logan is a depressed, limping alcoholic that wants nothing to do with anyone, but is approached by a woman who needs him to help her and the child, Laura, who turns out to be a genetically engineered mutant. So, of course, Logan is reluctant to help, but ends up helping Laura anyway, and regains his humanity, sort of, when he comes to care for her. An aging, rough and tough guy, and a child that he comes to love traveling to some place. Where have I seen that before? Oh, in quite a few other stories. Some people have compared Logan to the video game The Last of Us, and while the comparison is probably a valid one, I can't comment on it, as I haven't played the game. However, when watching Logan, I immediately thought of Stephen King's The Dark Tower series and the characters Roland and Jake. And heck, even Waterworld has basically the same story. In addition to the central character relationships being unoriginal, The entire film and almost every single plot point was as predictable as the weather in Antarctica. For the record, I have no idea how predictable the weather in Antarctica is. I haven't been to that place since the 50s. Anyway, allow me to ask some rhetorical questions as per usual with my reviews. For starters, was there anyone who didn't know that Logan would end up helping Laura and taking her to safety? No, there wasn't. We've all seen stories like this before, and we knew he'd help her. But, you might protest, this is a fantasy/action movie. Of course we know things like that. This problem, if it can even be called a problem, is not unique to Logan. We also knew in The Lord of the Rings that Frodo would reach Mordor. We knew in Star Wars that both Death Stars would end up destroyed. Oh, spoilers by the way. We know in almost all movies that the good guys will win, and so on and so on, so what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is the fact that the movie takes more than half an hour before Logan finally agrees to take Laura with him, which makes watching all the scenes where he doesn't yet want to help just a total chore. Just imagine if the part in the Fellowship of the Ring where Frodo offers Gandalf the ring took up like 20 minutes with Frodo saying, "No, I won't take the ring, I won't take the ring, you take the ring, I don't want anything to do with the ring, the One Ring is not something I want." How boring would that have been? Probably as boring as the first 30 to 45 minutes of Logan. Am I being unreasonable here? Yes, most likely I am. After all, the first half an hour of the film does establish more than just Logan being a miserable, selfish, washed-up guy who doesn't want to help others. It also sets up things like Xavier's condition and his and Wolverine's dream of buying a yacht and living the rest of their days in peace and quiet on the seas. So I will admit that hating on Logan's cannot help will not help attitude is nitpicky, but don't worry, we're just getting started. Second rhetorical question. Was there anyone who didn't know exactly what would happen to the armed men who went into Logan's hideout to get Laura? Seriously, was there even one person who didn't know that Laura would exit that building alone, having killed off all of her attackers? I am just a regular guy, and I have no ability to see the future, and I saw that coming from a million miles away, so I am guessing that everybody else did as well. Third rhetorical question. Did anybody think that the family who raised horses would survive after Logan and others agreed to stay in their house for the night? Was there even one moviegoer who didn't know immediately that they'd all get killed? Fourth rhetorical question. What did you, dear viewer, think the adamantium bullet was actually going to be used for, once the main enemy force was revealed to be a Wolverine clone? The film had already established that that bullet would kill Wolverine or Logan himself, and there was nobody with any capability to kill the Wolverine clone in the movie. I think even 5-year-olds would have realized early on that the adamantium bullet would end up in Wolverine clone's head, if they were allowed admission to an R-rated film like Logan. There was basically nothing in Logan that wasn't predictable. Watching this film was just a bore and a chore. It was a matter of sitting through one cliched, done-to-death story point after another just to get to the end of the damned thing. I would once again put money on all of us who saw the film, knowing exactly what and how and when would happen from beginning to end. I knew Logan would come to care for the girl. I knew Logan and Xavier would both die. I knew how the main villain would be defeated and by whom. I knew the kids would make it to safety, and I even knew that the albino guy would blow himself up. Okay, I'm lying about that last one, but everything else I did see coming long before it happened. Both the external and internal conflicts in this film were just so old, tired, and boring. The only way I can imagine I would have liked Logan was if it was the first film I ever saw. But it wasn't, and as such, I thought the predictability of everything in the film made it pretty damn poor. Part 3. Excessive violence isn't necessarily effective violence / incompetence. So Wolverine's claws can do some real damage, and this film shows that, much more so than any previous film in the franchise. The problem is, it gets old, fast. Wolverine hacking and slashing and blood splashing in the opening scene was pretty cool, it really was. And then, it happened again. And then the little girl did the same thing, and then the main bad guy did the same thing to other people, and then Wolverine and his clone did it to each other. I would compare this excessive use of hack and slash claw maneuver murdering to bullet time in the Matrix series. The first time you see it, it is visually impressive and captures your attention. By the end of the film, and even more so in the sequels, it is just annoying to say the least. What made watching Wolverine and his clone hacking and slashing everything and everyone even more boring was the fact that there was no sense of real danger for the most part. The soldiers who were sent to capture Laura and the other genetically engineered mutant kids were so incompetent that during the entire film they managed to kill none of them and wound only one. Logan and Laura herself cut the soldiers down like they are butter, which actually reminded me a lot of the Jedi taking out droids in the Star Wars prequels. And let's not forget the brilliant moment when this guy told his men not to shoot at Laura because she heals herself. Not to shoot? Then what the hell did you even bring guns for? The only people in there were 2 mutants who heal, and 2 weak, disabled people who couldn't defend themselves anyway. Why did you even bring guns and bullets? I mean, I think tranquilizers might have been a better idea, or I don't know, maybe make bullets out of adamantium? And coming back to predictability for one more moment, what did this guy think was going to happen to his soldiers when he sent them into the building Laura was in? It doesn't even make any sense for the soldiers to be incompetent and poorly prepared for taking on mutants, since the men leading them were deeply involved with the program that created those mutant children. You'd think during the very long time the research facility was active, they would have come up with suitable ways of controlling or eliminating potentially dangerous engineered kids. But no. The soldiers are incompetent, their leader is incompetent, and the strongest enemy and both our main characters are basically indestructible, resulting in totally boring and completely tensionless fight sequences that go on and on with no clear strategy from anyone and no feeling of anything being at stake. When Wolverine and his clone hack at each other again and again and again, and then heal and do the same thing once more, it is about as interesting as watching grass not grow or paint not dry. Part 4. Not the best X-Men movie. Seriously, Logan was not the best X-Men film. Not by a long shot. I haven't liked all of the movies in the franchise, but the Bryan Singer ones, especially the first 2, were pretty interesting and well done in my opinion. What makes Logan worse than X-Men and X2 isn't just the problems I discussed, but also the fact that it didn't really feel like an X-Men movie. For one, there were just 3 different mutants in the film. The 2 things that I most enjoyed about early X-Men films were the battles, where different characters used their powers, each in a unique and cool way. And, of course, Magneto, a truly great villain whose motives actually made a lot of sense and who had an interesting backstory. There was none of that in Logan. No Magneto, no interesting villain, just a Wolverine clone as the main evil force, and just hacking and slashing as far as strategy in fight scenes goes. With the possible exception of the mutant kids using their powers at the very end. Also, due to its dark tone and subject matter, Logan wasn't so much a superhero film. It was almost like a post-apocalyptic film. That's sort of how it felt anyway. There seems to be a mostly unchallenged consensus amongst film critics and fans alike that really dark equals good when it comes to films. And in my view, that's just false, especially when it comes to superhero films. A darker type film like Batman Begins can be great, but so can a more lighthearted tongue-in-cheek film like Spider-Man 2. For me, Logan was just too miserable, too predictable, and too bad. Part 5. Are we done complaining? So, are we? Yes, we are. As predictable and boring as Logan was, and as unexciting as the action scenes in it were, the film wasn't all bad. The performances were really good, and I also liked the score quite a bit. And the brief quiet moments between Wolverine and Xavier were nice. I just wish there had been more of those and less of everything else. For the sake of ending this rather bashful review on a lighter note, I just wish to repeat what I said in the beginning, which is that I am truly glad for everyone who liked or even loved this film. I may have disliked it, but at least some people got some bang for their buck and some entertainment for their time. My final score for Logan is a 5 out of 10. It is at best an average film. and at worst, a rather bad one, and it is right next to Gladiator in my list of films that I don't care for, but almost everybody else seems to love. Thank you for watching and listening to this review. Let me know whether you disagree or agree with some or all of my points in the comments, and as always, feel free to leave me suggestions on what I should review next. May you always find great art to enjoy, and may you never run out of coffee and cookies.